Back at the vision stage, automation, digitalisation, AI, robotics, these are all some of the magnificent high-tech conversations we're going to be having in the next 30 minutes or so. And more importantly, how co-creation leads to big steps forward. Joep van den Bosch from Ridder is here. Warm greetings to you. We have as well David Hunter from Optimal Labs and Adi Nier from MetoMotion. Greetings, gentlemen. Joep, in the input, in the rehearsals, Ridder, you basically said you go faster alone, but you go further together. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's a nice saying that is used in different industries, by the way. So we're using it in the greenhouse industry. If we look at the challenges, Ridder is a broad supplier of greenhouse technology already for almost 70 years. So we are very experienced in the business, but we are at a new age that is starting. At a new age.
What do you mean?
The age of autonomous greenhouses. And there's a lot of technology outside of the industry, like robotization, artificial intelligence, everything what's happening with data analytics. And that is creating so much new possibilities that we as company believe that we cannot do that alone.
Yeah.
So we really need partners, co-creation, to really utilize those new technologies and develop solutions for growers together.
And David, Optimal Labs, heavily into AI, and you saw an opportunity here in horticulture to get engaged, but why would you get engaged with the horticultural sector?
Well, because, the way I see it, and I think this is pretty shared by many people, is that we need to build a lot more greenhouses around the world. Firstly, people are demanding more healthy, locally grown food, but we've got a lot of problems with climate change. And if we can't grow outdoors, we have to grow indoors. And greenhouses are really going to be a key part to solving that problem. But we can't scale greenhouses fast enough. There's a lot of demand for new greenhouses around the world, but operators can't scale. And it's because of two fundamental problems. One is a shortage of crop handling labor, which is more severe in certain markets than others. And the other one is a shortage of expertise, particularly around growing. And when I first came into the industry and looked at a greenhouse and looked at the control systems that growers were using, I was honestly amazed that growers could even achieve the results that they're achieving.
Okay.
So really, the green thumb is something.
Yeah.
He's looking at me now.
Yeah.
But if I compare, I came really from outside the industry. I've got a computer science background. And if I look at what's happening in other areas of technology and the steps that have been made there, I just see a lot of possibilities for improvements in horticulture.
But you could have worked, I don't know, on SpaceX and the next mission to Mars or anything like that. Oh, why choose horticulture? Because I know these guys are really nice to work with, but is that enough?
Yeah, we've got guys in our team who, they've come from Google DeepMind, Google's AI division, from McLaren, places like this. Why do they come and join Optimal? Well, it's what I said at the start. Fundamentally, we need more indoor farming around the world. Greenhouses are a very highly efficient method of indoor farming. For majority of crop types, the most efficient method. And so if we can solve the barriers to scale within greenhouses, it will directly result in more greenhouses being built, which I think is very, very important. So that's kind of the reason.
Fantastic. And a chance to almost geek out as well.
A chance to geek out, yeah. I think, a lot of similar technologies that have been applied in autonomous driving and space exploration and stuff like that, especially on the robotics side and sort of AI side, control system side, that will find its way into horticulture. So yeah, it's interesting growing a crop and controlling the climate in a greenhouse, for example. On the one hand, it has its own set of challenges. very different problem to autonomous driving, but you know, the crop itself, it's a very mysterious biological system of which we as mere humans don't know a huge amount about, even to this day.
So Joep, you must have lots of interested people knocking on the door. Come on, I want to work on this. I want to do this.
Yeah, now we are on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
But it's I've been in the industry already for quite some time, but the number of young people with new ideas that is knocking on the door is getting bigger and bigger. And there's what David is saying is that there's more interest for people are in sustainable food production, but I also see with young people that they're more interested in starting up their own business, trying to develop from their idea or their dream their own business, and that's also where Reader can partner with them.
Well, we'll talk about that and how to embrace that entrepreneurial spirit in just a moment. Let's come to Artie first, if we can. So we heard that horticulture is, well, let's say an area, an environment which is ripe for high-tech development, and robotics, which is what you're doing at MetoMotion. Of course, is that high-tech or one of the high-tech areas? You also come from a country which is very interested in food security, as every country is, but has particular challenges there. So automizing and digitalizing and using robotics in a high-tech context is just it's a natural thing to do. It must be really easy for you to be able to apply all this great stuff.
I think if it was so easy, we would have seen it long ago. My connection, I think, if David spoke about his, I actually started my career as a farmer in the kibbutz. So I have my backgrounds over there, and then for many years, if you talked about sending a spaceship to Mars, then worked in the aerospace and defense system in Israel, and then decided I saw the gap in agriculture and to take this knowledge and bring it back into agriculture. We saw the gap over there, the problems, the growing demand for food and labor shortage. And why not taking all the great solutions already developed in other areas and bring them back to that field?
Joep, let's go now to the more technological side of things. So talk about, please, how to become autonomous. You know, how do you do it? Do you have some examples? What does that really mean?
The autonomous is a big step. To refer to what David said about when he first entered into the greenhouse and looked to how growers are controlling their crop. And I feel, for me, that's very personal. I come from a grower family as well. I've been involved in organizing, developing climate control. But David is absolutely right. The climate control that we have today does a lot of intelligent things, but basically it's a 24-hour clock. Every 24 hours, it runs through the same settings, and the human, the green thumb, is still the decisive factor of the parameters and what is happening. And that is, after 35 years climate control, that is still the case. And I think that's where it starts. How can we digitalize the knowledge of growers to multiply it and then make greenhouses more autonomous? And that's on the grower side, and Adi is more on the worker side. There's been a lot of automation already in other industries, but also, for instance, in greenhouses, in the packing area, there's a lot of automation. But somehow you walk into the greenhouse and everything is manual again. We need to get people from all over the world to pick our tomatoes, to cut the leaves.
Not an easy proposition in certain
not
times.
very autonomous. Not very autonomous.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity, and with things as food security, sustainable food production, local food production. The only way to really scale up is to make it autonomous.
So we had a discussion about autonomous greenhouses just a little earlier here, and on a scale of 0 to 10, I asked to what level of autonomy can we actually go? And the answer was, perhaps a 7 or an 8. There's always going to be some human factor in there, but you can optimize the way that human factor is used, so you can, clone the green thumbs quite successfully to do so. Do you have examples that are perhaps closer to the 7 scale than the perhaps 3 or 4 scale you were describing just a moment ago?
Now, I joined that session, and I didn't fully understand because I felt they were very optimistic with a 7 on a scale of 10, where we are or where we go. I'm a full believer that we can reach the 9.5 level, but not today or tomorrow. And today, I would say maybe we're at the 2 or 3 level. And part of using technology from David or from Adi is also to take the grower along in that process.
Yeah.
And I believe very much in a step-by-step approach, that by introducing new technology, taking over the work from growers, and see it as tools for growers, where today you have an experienced grower that is running 10 hectares. I think in 5 years' time, that same grower is able to run 100 hectares, because he has the tools of Adi and David and his reach. And then it's not fully autonomous yet, but then we can build 10 times the amount of greenhouses with the same knowledge.
That's a fantastic vision forward, but there are a lot of very personal emotions involved with that.
Yeah.
We did have as well a good session where the TU Delft was talking about the training programs there, Delphi talking about what they're doing as well in the training field, and there's a lot of interest and a lot of movement in there to clone those green thumbs, but also to automate them as you just suggested. But on a practical basis, how does RIDA work together with Optimal Labs and with MetoMotion? Do you have some kind of a test greenhouse that you're working together on, or how does it work very practically?
Yeah, the testing is very essential. Testing is essential also to get feedback from growers, and we have been working with both already for a few years, and really tried to bring them to the high-tech growers, to develop the technology to a standard that it's acceptable for a high-tech grower. Because if it's acceptable for the Dutch grower, you can really apply it worldwide. That's the high level of growing that we have here. And one of the elements that is also essential, and that is also a call from me also to the industry, is that we need to open up systems. And one of the things that we did when we had first contact with David is basically, David wants for his program to run, he needs all the relevant data from our climate control systems. And of course, that was the first step. But of course, David was not only happy with having the data, he wanted to do the next step. He also wanted to access or download his parameters into the system again. And today you still see there's a lot of systems that are closed, that are not open for sharing data. And the second step is even more difficult for most companies. So for RIDA, that was a big step too. But we really felt that it was necessary to open up the system to apply AI and robotics in a later stage.
So David, in terms of your wish list to the industry, of how to get those systems up and running, that would presumably be close to the top, or maybe the top, have an open architecture, both directions?
I think that's up to the individual control computer suppliers to decide. That's going to be a core part of their strategy, but there will be some companies who will want to keep it as a completely closed system and either develop technology themselves or through partnerships develop technology. And there'll be other companies like RIDA who will follow more of a kind of open approach and aim to become a platform through which other companies develop applications and systems. And yeah, I mean, time will tell which one of those two approaches wins. I obviously believe strongly in the second approach, and I think that looking at the way the industry is, the greenhouse industry is at the moment, I believe that will inevitably happen anyway. There will be more and more people coming into the industry. You need different expertise. I mean, right here, you know, Adi's company has expertise in robotics. That's not something that we have expertise in. And so it makes sense that we focus on the part of a problem which we can most competently solve. Yeah, so I think that approach is the right one, but it's up to each individual control computer company, obviously, to decide as a core part of their strategy.
Good, clear message. Adi, your robots are also a source of data, which can be processed and can be used. And so, obviously, with the green thumb and the grower, they remember things and they think back and use experience. But robots can have a similar function as well, I understand.
Yes, and I think this is a very important thing to take in. This is actually changing the whole process, because robots don't just do tasks or that being done manually today. They remember and collect each part of the data they see and analyze. And I think the autonomous greenhouse is actually not just building the blocks, but connecting them together. This is very important. If you want to reach from 7 to 9, you also need to build that bridge. That system will talk to each other and transfer this information. I think this is what Reader is trying to lead here in that process.
Yeah. I also think just you know, we're focusing on Reader and optimal, you know, Reader and MetoMotion, but I think there'll be a lot of collaboration between different companies. Like, I can see that robots which go around the greenhouse, you can attach additional sensors to them. To know which sensors to attach, you will need to collaborate with a company that focuses more on the growing side of things. And so, you know, I think you'll see a lot of collaboration between robotics companies and autonomous kind of growing companies.
We're collecting the data, the images. Anyone can take it to a different angle and look for different. Someone can look for disease, someone for yield prediction. Any kind of task can be using this information.
There was also feedback we got from some high-tech Dutch growers where they looked at the MetoMotion robot and said, let's first start with all the data that you're collecting. How can we access that? Can we bring that to
You
platform?
just need the username and the password.
So the data, already growers are very aware of the importance of data. And the data collected with robots is also for use for growing recipes to optimize the crop. So it is all connected.
And the TU Delft, you know, really said that sensors and sensing and adapting that and having the right parameters and being able to measure, that's really the biggest gap probably technologically at the moment, at least in their view, to getting to more autonomous greenhouses. So that's obviously an area for investment and to consider moving forward. Good. I'd like to turn things around slightly, and we talked a lot about sort of the growing scene in the Netherlands and how, you know, if we can make it here, we can make it anywhere almost. But let's look at it from a different market perspective, somewhere which is perhaps starting from scratch almost. I don't know, somewhere in the Gulf, for example. And think about how those technological leaps, you mentioned leapfrogging as well, how that could perhaps be influential in the Dutch marketplace. I assume that in certain regions, you know, you'll already be going to number 8 or even 9 on the scale.
I see your point.
Does that inspire the Netherlands as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Especially when you make the bridge to if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. In that sense, the Dutch market could also be the last one to adopt all those technologies. And I think you said it once, David, that maybe growers in new markets or investors in new markets will be quicker to adopt all those autonomous technologies than a Dutch grower that already has the knowledge himself.
We had on the scale, just to add to that
Yeah.
quickly, talking about vertical farming yesterday, we talked about the situation in Europe and how quickly from, and they said 0.1 is where we are on the scale of to 10 in terms of vertical farming and how ubiquitous it is. When do we get to 8 was the question in Europe, 2030, 2031 maybe? And there was a gentleman from Korea and he says, well, you know, we're a bit faster in Asia, we'll be there at 2025. So that supports exactly what, you know, your assumption is there.
Yeah. So I think in the areas where there are big investments now in greenhouse technology, there it will probably go quicker. But also in the Netherlands, there's an amazing trend in consolidation of the industry. That means that the number of growers and companies is getting less very quickly, and the companies that stay are no longer the pop and mom countries. That's professional-run businesses with also venture capital stepping into. So those companies will professionalize, and they will also feel the need to automate. So maybe it's a different route, but I think they will pick up very quickly.
Yeah, we did talk about the cultural change within companies like yourselves.
Yeah.
And how that is not a trivial matter. That's quite a subject for another day, maybe. That could well be. But I mean, David, Adi, you must have your eye on some of those developing markets as well.
I think just about, you know, making it in the Netherlands can make it anywhere. I think there are some areas, I think obviously the Dutch are world leaders in greenhouse horticulture, but there are some things that cause, I think, things in the Netherlands for Dutch to be at disadvantage. One of those is climate. So the Dutch, you know,
Too easy.
well, we just have a temperate climate in Northwest Europe, and it's very well suited for, you know, a Venlo greenhouse. It performs very well there. If you look at a map of the climate zones around the world and you filter on temperate, there's a big blob in Northwest Europe where we are today, and not a huge amount else. So there's a few areas in the US where, you know, Canada, where you have similar kind of climate regions, and funnily enough, there are greenhouses there, like Delta, for example, in British Columbia. But to truly deploy greenhouses in other markets, in other countries, and especially those countries where they really need greenhouses the most, you have to deal with a different climate. And that inevitably means a more complex greenhouse design. And the gap between where a grower is today and where they need to be in order to operate these more, it's even larger than it is for Venlo greenhouses. Yeah. And so that's just one example of where I think the problems in some of these newer markets are different to the ones in the Netherlands, and it might be that the innovation comes from companies within those markets.
Yeah, we had one company focusing on the equator and really 300 kilometers north and south of the equator is where they want to be, because they find similar conditions but very adverse conditions there for the solutions they're developing. In another case, it was plus 40 degrees C in the summer, minus 40 degrees C in Kazakhstan in the steppes in the winter, and that obviously has big implications as well. But same question to you, Adi.
Okay, I think that actually if you look at the greenhouse market, so Netherlands is a very good place to start with. We have here the most advanced technology for greenhouses. We call it robotics ready. Yeah. But if you look worldwide, then this is the 10%. 90% are different. And I think the next level will be also to spread it into other climates, which is even more challenging. And this will be one of our challenges for the next, or maybe for the next step after automating and digitalization of the Dutch-style greenhouses.
You might have a different opinion to me here, I guess. But yeah, my view is that places like the Netherlands and the US, Canada will be early adopters of robotics, but late adopters of kind of autonomous growing because they already have growers. So that the early adopters of more autonomous growing, by that I mean the decision making around the crop will be these countries where there really is a lack of
building
growers.
this industry from scratch right now. Maybe it will be easier for them to adopt.
But in some of those countries,
instead of
there's less
changing
problems with
someone
labor.
already.
In some of those countries, there's less of a problem with labor than there is, for example, in Europe and in the US.
Cost-wise.
So, yeah, exactly. So you would obviously introduce your prototype robot, which is very expensive per plant, whilst you're still developing the technology. You also want to introduce that in the area where you have highest, where the labor is the highest, the costs.
Yeah.
And then go as you further develop your technology, you can then roll out to those other countries.
So you're going to be working more in the high-income countries. You're in the low-income. Your paths are only ever going to cross here at GreenTech. But we'll report again next year as to the experiences which are going on there. But maybe, Joep, as a final word, how do you see the next, I mean, we can't talk about 5 or even 10 years when we're talking about AI and robotics. I mean, how do you see the next 6 months, 12 months, in terms of the very long-term view of this high-tech industry?
Yeah. Sometimes people ask me about autonomous greenhouses. Is it a dream? When can it be there? My feeling is, and my experience is that technology is only developed quicker and quicker. Where you used to have 4 or 5 years to develop something, now it needs to be there in 6 months. And I think if we talk artificial intelligence, robotics, it's going to happen next year. And next year we will hear of the first growers that are running autonomously.
Right, that is a promise on this stage next year.
Next year, June,
we'll talk
they're here.
all about that.
I will show you the examples.
Magnificent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your contributions. A big round of applause, please. So, next up here at the Vision stage at GreenTech, we are going to have an update on the medicinal cannabis market. That's coming up in about 15 minutes here. Thank you very much.